Ausculta, the first word of the Holy Rule of St Benedict. It is the attitude of the creature, reception, mendicity, emptiness, awaiting. In Hebrew, if one wants to underline a point, one repeats a word or one amplifies a phrase. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. The Gospel is all about the Word, and we have here several categories. Many are impeded in their hearing. The eye needs to observe, and the spiritual ear needs to be wide open. There is a verse in the Psalm that asks for this grace indirectly. It is, "You do not ask for Holocaust and victim, but an open ear." But it could be translated, "But you have dug out for me a ear." The digging out of the ear of the soul, taking away the wax that's in the inner ear, making us totally available for one vibration. The Lord goes on to indicate how different things impede. And one category, which is actually very modern, is that of the thorns. They are impeded because there is throttling going on, stifling and strangling. Thorns grow and get dense. And he gives 3 reasons. They are throttled by cares, worries, anxiety, pleasures, how much energy goes into preparing pleasure, and riches, how much the soul wants to own. But all owning pertains to the material, and the material remains in the material, whereas the soul goes on without the material and owns nothing. There are no pockets in a shroud. All the soul owns is its baggage, and that baggage is its absence or presence with regard to merit acquired. The books were opened, and there we see how much we owned, really. The desert, the monastic desert, is the place where there is availability. The air is cleared, uncluttered. And indeed, traditionally that does take place. No telephone, no screen, no talking or exchange of soul. Therefore total availability and no crossed wires. One can listen well when there's a simplification of messages. About 30 years ago, there was the introduction in some monasteries of a bleeping system, whereby a superior might be able to be contacted, that he might be aware that someone was trying to get him, for instance on the phone outside. But he might be bleeped by a device in his pocket to say that that was the case, and it would be a shortcut to getting him quickly, tracking him down. Convenient. And many monasteries took on such a system. But I remember hearing that André Louf, one of the great abbots, Trappist abbots of the time in France, and also a great author, who wrote translated by now, Seigneur, apprends-nous à prier, Lord, teach us to pray. He, from the word go, refused any bleep in his pocket. Cela nous enlève la liberté. That takes away our freedom. He wanted space for God and also for souls. And what right has another soul to come as a wedge between his and the soul before him by one almighty bleep? That was way before anything like mobile phones came in. And there we have, in the monastery, the fullness of the Trojan horse, right there in the cell. The bleep, the almighty quiet bleep. Even though one might not answer in prayer or in Lectio Divina, if the bleep is heard, the mind is stirred and goes elsewhere, off its centre, which is the reason for its being there. The soul of man encountering its King. Our God is gentle in voice, doesn't make much noise, and he needs corresponding gentleness on the part of the soul. And that soul then gets to listen to all his language. The event is his habitual one. History is his story. And in our Catholic faith, there is much intersection between heaven and earth in the event. All the time in the sacramental sphere, God and man are touching. On this day we think of the way in which, in the hands of the Cardinal Archbishop of Naples, the blood of St Januarius will or will not liquefy at the appointed time. And the people of Naples and the whole surrounding area are very keen to know whether it happens or not. For if it doesn't, it's usually an ominous sign. Last year it did happen. The previous year it did not, and it was a cause of some concern. Some years ago, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, went to that area and he was given to hold the miraculous phial. And it half liquefied. No one was quite sure what that meant. Some years ago, in the monastery in Italy, I was talking to the good sisters whose retreat I used to give on a monthly basis. They used to come from a nearby convent to us. They were lovely sisters, very faithful. They had vocations through the Philippines, and they had a very Eucharistic orientation, full habit and gentleness of soul. But they casually mentioned to me that they actually had also a miracle of the same type. It was in one of their major houses in Naples, where they had been founded. And they had, by chance, an ancient relic of an early Christian martyr, St. Patricia. And on her feast day, the same miracle would happen. Her liquefied blood would indicate a presence to the community. It would turn into visible blood every year on her feast day. And one year I was invited to go down there for the occasion. I had friends in the Naples area and it would have been possible. At the last minute it had to be cancelled because the Archbishop wanted to see us all in chapter that day. However, it was interesting because far less known, but not less real. And it's interesting how these saints interact with the people from on high, from their place of glory. And we do well to listen also to that language of our God. For prayer, sincere, is answered quite often, and we don't give thanks. Thanks for the event, which is the habitual language of our God, unchanged, and ever unchanging. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus,